Welcome to everyone. Thank you all so much for joining our very first Good Grief workshop. For those that maybe I haven't had a chance to meet, I'm Veronica Pulido. I'm the founder of Good Grief. And, I'm very thankful that you're taking the time to join this session where we'll be talking about how to use the holidays to heal, especially when it relates to navigating grief. I know we just turned the corner with Thanksgiving and that, the holidays can be a really difficult time when you're navigating loss, given that a lot of conflicting emotions can come up. And for today, we're really, really fortunate to have Lori Mulady Burdick, who's an amazing licensed grief therapist here in Austin. And she will be leading this workshop for us where she'll be sharing these really great tips and practical advice for how we can navigate the season with compassion, how, we can share ways to create healing during this difficult time. Now, for those who might not know Lori, she brings over 33 years of experience as a licensed grief therapist. She runs her own private counseling practice here in Austin and is also a wellness counselor teaching a number of courses at 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 Resorts, which is actually where her and I met. There's actually a 𝘃𝗏𝗏 here in Austin, so if you haven't had a chance to check out 𝘃𝗏𝗏 Resorts, highly recommend it. I promise they are not paying me anything to say this, but it is truly a wonderful experience. Um, Now, when I was navigating my dad's illness and his passing, I saw a number of counselors, but I never felt like I was seeing people that really specialized in grief and loss. And it wasn't until I attended Lori's class at 𝘃𝗏𝗏 that it was such an eye-opening experience for me. It was the first time where I was like, wow, someone truly understands my grief. And, she helped share these tools and ways to navigate grief and loss that were very, very helpful for me and made a huge difference. So she's fantastic. I'm really excited to have her here in front of our members. And, if you do ever have a chance to either have a private session with Lori or take one of her courses at 𝘃𝗏𝗏, I highly, highly recommend it. Now, before we begin and I hand it off to Lori, I'll just do a quick overview on the format for today. Our workshop will be about 40 minutes long in terms of Lori presenting content, and then we will open it up for Q&A. If you have a burning question and you don't want to forget it, please feel free to enter it in the chat and we'll make sure that we get to it towards the end. Part of why we're leaving Q&A towards the end is that we are recording this session for anyone that might have not been able to join. But when we get to Q&A, I'll make sure to pause the recording so that you can just really feel free to ask questions, and so that we can make sure that we're respecting everyone's privacy and that you can ask anything that comes up. So with that, I really hope today's session is supportive and valuable, and I'll hand it over to Lori so that she can introduce herself and walk us through the content.
Thank you so much. This is awesome to be here. I'm honored to get to be asked to host this today. This is a very special topic in my heart and what I get to do for a profession. But companioning those, especially the holidays, and why I like to say holidays is probably, we can use it to heal, is it doesn't go along with grief. Grief and the holidays actually kind of rub on each other. They're just not aligned, right? Holidays are very much filled with joy and connection and community. And when you have the loss of an attachment and gone through grief, these don't hit very well. So this is probably the best time to practice holding space for grief. And as Veronica mentioned, I did meet her at 𝘃𝗏𝗏. And getting to work there has been such a blessing for me. I hold a class there called Life, Loss, and Letting Go. And in that lecture, we learn a lot about what the heck is grief. You don't need to be scared of it. And wellness industry, which what we do there at 𝘃𝗏𝗏, is we do believe when you lift your head off the pillow in the morning, you have everything you need in your body for health, wellness, and healing. But you and I override those processes because we don't know how they work. And so in that lecture, we educate you on what the heck is grief. And we talk about the stages of shock and disorganization and reorganization. And we talk about how you navigate it. What is it? We give you a plan, and then we close down with a letting go meditation. But for tonight's topic on using the holidays to heal, one of the biggest stressors I think around the holidays is the anticipation of the holiday. And so when we talk about grief and learning how to hold space to let the process do its magic, um, holidays is probably the best time to practice this because you don't really know how to navigate it. And so we're going to talk tonight about some ideas on how we go about navigating the holidays, because with anticipation being the worst part of it, the actual holiday itself typically isn't as bad as the anticipation. So let's start with kind of our first talking point that we're going to start with, and that's about being kind to yourself. One thing that we teach in wellness is we've left behind language and research on what we call self-esteem. We've moved more towards language and research on what we call self-compassion. You and I have forgotten how to be a human being. And grief is a very human process. You're more in it than you're not. And what we teach a lot in that class about understanding grief is that when you're going through a loss or transition, you have the same response you would if you had a broken leg, right? We get swelling, we get this inflammation through cortisol. And when you have those symptoms, the symptoms show up as brain fog. They show up as eyesight changing, sleep disturbance, losing appetite, inability to make decisions. And so these are normal things around grief, and you don't need to fight it. But when you're trying to be forced to do activities or planning around the holiday season, we need to teach you how to enter it with a more kind approach. So if you come to 𝗪𝗁 and meet me in my boundaries lecture, you're going to learn to never use the word nice again. Just stop using it. That's a people pleaser word. We're going to invite you into kindness language. When I'm kind to you, I'm typically kind to self. So we're going to teach you how to allow yourself the comforts of the holiday, but also not pushing yourself beyond what you can do. And so what's our next one that we've got there? And so the main teaching I love to give is the words for now. When you're going through grief, we want to add those two words to the end of everything. I'm not doing holiday traditions for now. We're not making homemade dinners for now. We're not traveling for now. I'm not making big decisions for now. These words give you permission to know that you are in a transition. And as we always talk about in grief, I share in my class that you and I are made for attachment. I have a bias that I don't think you're made for detachment. And I say that because I've been a therapist for 33 years and I see it. But I do know that higher source, divine, whoever gave us this beautiful grief process knows that. And that's why it gives us the beauty of shock and denial, because it knows you need a moment to catch your breath and rewrite the narrative. And so we're going to put things off for now until we're ready to deal with it and be able to address it. So we want you to have permission to go about the holidays any way you need to for now. And it's not a permanent change. So that's the gift of that language. What's our next one, Veronica? Eliminating unnecessary stress is what we teach you when cortisol is heightened, which will happen. The example I give in my lecture at 𝗪𝗁 is that if I broke my leg, most of life didn't change. I changed. And when it heals, I'll get back into life just fine. But when you have a loss of attachment, a bomb's been detonated. Not only do you have the broken leg, you have the gaping hole. And when the leg heals, I'll get back into life just fine. But what's with me in year 2 is that gaping hole. So we talk a lot about grief can be beyond 2 years. And it's not that it's elongated for everybody. It just knows that year 2 is harder than year 1. So we want to kind of educate when you're going through this process. When cortisol is heightened, you only have 40% to function. 60% of your energy is managing cortisol. So when we're in a grief process, you feel like you're moving through wet cement. And I get so many clients in my office saying, Lori, I can't focus, I can't think, I can't sleep, I can't eat. I'm taking antidepressants, I'm taking sleep aids, nothing's helping me. And I'm not saying don't take those, but if they're not helping you, it's because that's not what we're dealing with. There is no medication for grief, but you don't need to be scared about it. Grief knows how to hold space, slowing you down, so you can hold the space to rewrite this narrative. But you and I live in a culture who moves at, they think, at 120%. So you're moving at a third of the rate that the rest of the culture is moving at when you're in grief. So we just want you to notice the 40%. And all that means, if I have a list of things to do today, we cut it in half, take 2 things off. That's all you're doing today. And you tell me who in life gives you permission to do just that, including you, and especially during the holidays. You've really got to reduce this and have clear expectations of what you can do and what you can't do. And so 60% is managing cortisol. You don't have access. So we're going to take some things off our plate. And this is where I tell a lot of guests and clients, if you can't take an FMLA with your company, we may need to reduce your job performance for a period of time if you can't take time off. So please budget that time in, because pets, plants, and people need you at home, and you need you. And 40% doesn't go that far. So we want to be good stewards of our energy. The next one is the 20-minute rule. Oh no, it's express feelings. Okay, gotcha. Did I skip one? Yeah, express feelings. This is the one that I love to teach in our class because I always get questions around grief and is it about feelings? And the answer is yes. But feelings are only lasting 90 seconds. And 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 gave us the 5 stages. You might have heard those before if you're not new to grief. It's our denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And a lot of my guests say, oh, I heard she got debunked. She did, only because people read the literature as if it was a checklist. It's not that simple, and it's not that clean. I like to call it your cruise ship. You're going to go to all those ports, and emotions have a space holding for you while you deal with the feelings underneath it. And as a therapist, it's hard to describe the difference between an emotion and a feeling. The best I've come up with is they're not the same thing, but they complement each other well, but they're both transient. And if you understand emotion, just like 𝘃𝗶𝗱𝗏 says, right, denial comes for a reason while you're dealing with those feelings of overwhelm, disbelief, disempowerment, whatever that is, violation, whatever's down here. And when you name the feelings, they actually get unlocked, they get released. Feelings only last 90 seconds. So we don't want you negating them. So if it's not talking to a friend, doesn't matter. I want you journaling. We teach a lot at 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗶 about stream of conscious writing, releasing, even doing a burning ritual. I always joke with my clients that I'm kind of a pyromaniac when it comes to this. I like a fire pit and a legal pad. I just want to do those open-ended statements and get it all out. If you know you're burning it, you're going to be more honest with yourself. You're going to get underneath that anger. And once you're done with all the feelings, you don't need that anger or protection anymore. So we learn a lot about how you navigate emotions and feelings, but do express them. And if you have no one to talk to, please write it down, tear it up if you have to, or burn it in a fire pit. Yeah, that's our next one. 20-minute rule, I think, is the next one. It's my favorite one to give you during the holidays because you're going to have commitments or expectations, and you will tend to isolate in grief. The reason we isolate, in my lecture, those that have taken it, I call them, and I'm not trying to throw a Jenny down the block or throw her under the bus, but I gave Karen a break because Karen gets a bad rap. So I came up with another name and threw Jenny under the bus. But anyway, we have a lot of Jennies in our culture. We're not what we call trauma-informed care. And so the 20-minute rule is the only way we can really navigate through that, because you're going to get a girlfriend or a friend who invites you to lunch. And you're like, oh, we learn in grief that number one, I don't know about the men, but that's a 3-hour lunch. I don't have energy for 3 hours. We learn that we don't have an appetite in grief. So why the heck would I go to lunch? But we also learn that you want to talk about it. So how do I do that? Well, you tell your friend, hey, I'm going to come for about 20 minutes. Can you help me leave after 20 minutes? If they love you, they got you. And not only will they'll be like, hey, I'll Uber you. Don't even drive. You want water? I'll give you a pitcher because we'll talk about hydration in a moment. The beauty of that is once you're there, you can get an appetizer for the table, take a nibble. After 20 minutes, you're gone. But if you're not paying attention, I'm a firm believer, we're going to talk about the 3 people in your life in a moment. You need at least 3 people to help you navigate loss. And when we do that, I'm at a lunch with a friend. Veronica invites 2 other ladies. We're having a conversation. I'm like, oh my God, they get me. This is one of my safe people. I can stay longer if I want to. It also means if you want to go to church, synagogue, temple, holiday function, come late, leave early. And the reason you want to do this little reconnaissance mission is you know your support and you can find them. And if you feel safe, you can stay longer and elongate the 20 minutes to 30 or 40 if you'd like. But the reason you do that is that there's a Jenny down the block at the entrance and exits, and they say the stupidest things. And so what we find in not being a Jenny in our culture, when we talk about the class, you don't want to give a value statement or judgment on anybody else's grief. Because, for example, if I lost a child, I may say I miscarried a child and I'm questioning, wow, I guess it was that spicy dinner I had last night. My mother would be horrified, saying, Lori, you didn't cause this. She'll shut down my processing. Or somebody may be on the street trying to be comforting, saying, hey, I guess that was God's will. They meant no harm by that. But I might interpret that like, why would God will such a horrific thing for me to experience? It complicates the grief. So when we are practicing our 20-minute rule, it's about knowing I can do anything for 20 minutes, but we also know you can come late and leave early, because the people at the entrance and exits pull the Jenny down the block card and they say really dumb things. And if you want to learn how to hold that space for others, there's a really good book called There's No Good Card for This. So if you want to find a way to companion others, if you're somebody here that's learning today that is with people going through a loss, it's a beautiful book. There's no good card for this. It's well written. It's well researched. It's kind of funny because we've all said it, and we want to learn what to say in grief. The next one is work off stress. And what we're talking about here is we need you moving. I used to work with back surgery candidates. And when we did, they'd have surgery. And as soon as they woke up, we got them out of bed and they had to walk the ward. And they're looking at us like, why are you making us walk? We just had our backs done. I'm like, yeah. You heal through circulation. I need you moving. But we really want you to hear, we want you doing low heart rate. And the reason for that is when cortisol is spiked, it's going to tax your vital organs. So we find things like heart attacks, other things, because we're tweaking that space. You can't access high heart rate during a time of grief. Your body doesn't want to do that. So we want to do things like AM, PM yoga, Tai Chi, walking your dog, walking your neighbor's dog if you don't have a dog. So we want gentle movement, Pilates without those cords. We want you stretching, moving, the body circulating in order to heal, but we want to keep it low heart rate during this time. The next one is drinking water. And part of what we're trying to invite here is when cortisol is spiked, it will dehydrate your system. So I invite all my clients to get in a habit of looking at their urine output in the morning because if it looks like Texas iced tea, you got what we call a 40% day on your hands. And so we want to hydrate the system. And all we mean by that, you don't need to overdo it, but it's 50% of your body weight in ounces. And we're going to talk about in a moment about watching out for overindulgence. You can have your comfort foods in moderation. But if you're a colored beverage drinker, that's not water. So I'm not going to take them from you. If you're my coffee, soda, tea, wine drinkers, you can have them. But I need you to have a glass of water before you consume them. I always know when I miss checking in the morning and I go for a second cup of coffee. I never have 2 cups of coffee. And if I'm craving a second, I know I'm dehydrated and I miss looking. And so I want you to get in a habit because I can guarantee you a 40% day, can never guarantee a 100% day, much less this 120% day that our culture thinks it can function off of. So when you're in grief, you're moving at a third of the energy the rest of the culture is, so it makes you feel a little crazy. So I just want to normalize you. You feel bona fide nuts. You're not crazy, I promise you, and you're not diagnosable. So stay hydrated during this time. The next one is alluding to the high overindulgence. It will be tempting to overconsume anything. And so we want to really watch your moderation, but we're not robbing you of comforts. That's what I love working at 𝘃𝗶𝗶𝗃 because we have wine and we have cookies. Our other competitor doesn't because we are all about balance. And we want you to find those comforts, but watch your moderation and balance for when you do those comforts and pleasures. The next one is finding those that will let you grieve. Doug Manning notes that you're looking for a friend who hangs around, hugs you, and hushes. This is kind of where we talk about not being a Jenny. And I remember when my daddy was passing, he's like, Lori, I never told what not to say to people. I need to write that book of what not to say when you visit someone in the hospital. If you haven't noticed, people will make it about themselves. They always do. We're filled with Jenny down the blocks. And so we really need to be selective on 3 safe people during this time. And I have to tell you, they can't be your family. And that might sound kind of odd. The reason they can't be family can love and support you during the process, but they can't do the work with you. And here's why. We all grieve differently. If I lost a child, my mother may say, hey, we're going to go plant a tree in honor of baby Ella. I'm like, I don't want a tree in honor of baby Ella. She's like, no, it'll be good for you. Oh, she's going to get my anger. That's when that stuff comes out because I don't want a tree. I want my baby. Now, my mom can go plant a forest if she wants to. Rock yourself out. That's a tradition she can set up. I can be invited, but do not push that on me. And so this is kind of where we need to learn and find your 3 safe people. And if you don't have them, you can hire them for a time, right? Every faith tradition holds space for grief. They all have groups. They're typically free. I refer people there all the time. Second is counseling clearly. Make sure we have a grief background. Not every counselor is trained in this, and I don't want them rushing you through the process. The third are groups called circles. They became very popular during COVID. Depending on your particular loss or transition, you can Google circles for whatever. Being an adult orphan, being a widow or widower. These groups are out there. And what's beautiful about a circle group is there are ways of sharing without those value statements and judgments. And that's really, we need those kind of confines or that space holding to help us navigate this. And again, if you don't have a person to talk to, journal it. I want you writing it. Our next one is finding ways to rest and to grieve. And this is one thing that at 𝘃𝗏𝗿 we're known for, is about creating pause. And this is what's really hard, is that you don't want to slow down. You might want to stay busy, but we need moments. I have a colleague that calls them sips. And so these, you don't have to do them long, but we need moments of grounding for your nervous system. That can be breath work. It can be using your senses. It could be just looking at nature, calling them sit spots, or a place to just sit and watch the day. The weather changes, it's always different. There could be a different squirrel or bird that comes by. I happen to be a birder. I work at a preserve. I'm kind of excited about that. When you hear a bird sing, your nervous system knows, number one, it's a safe environment, and it'll ground you if you hear it, because you're in present moment. And so what we teach a lot about as a therapist, I teach my clients, the reason you hire me, first off, is unmet expectations. It's really not rocket science. And so what we're trying to teach you at 𝘃𝗏𝗿, or anybody that's teaching you mindfulness practice or wellness, is we're trying to teach you to get into the present. Present is where we have intimacy and connection, joy, community. And when you're robbed of this place, you come see us as a therapist, right? There's something behind you, like a depression or complicated grief, shame, regret, that pulls you from this. Or there's something ahead of you, like anxiety or need to control, also robbing you of this. And so during grief, it's painful to be here, because if you lost a parent, or if you lost a child, or you lost somebody close to you, that intimacy, that connection, that community might feel tender. And so you may want to avoid this place for a while, and that's okay. But we want you to get back into the moment when you're ready to start creating some more of that spacing. The next one that we have is taking the initiative to ask for what you need. This is hard, to get into touch with what do you need during this time. One of the teachings I teach in my boundaries lecture, I have a friend who has social anxiety, and she calls it her commander's intent. And I love this teaching. The commander's intent, just like we teach at a 𝘃𝗏𝗿, we're teaching you to live with intention. So when it comes to the holidays, I want you to know, what is your commander's intent? What's your mission? And the example my friend would always give me is that she has social anxiety, and she calls family members, she loves them, but she calls them hugs that hurt. That might resonate with some people. And we're not shaming it, but when she would go for Thanksgiving, she thought, oh my goodness, I'm getting a lot of anxiety. But if she came with her commander's intent, she gets her mission. And if she knows she's bringing a side dish for the meal, and she has to show up for a 20-minute meal to share this meal with family, that's all she has to do. She doesn't have to stay at the house. She doesn't have to cook in the kitchen. She doesn't have to talk to anybody when she gets there. She can play with the grandbabies or the dogs, or go for a walk. That's all she has to do. Once you're clear on your commander's intent, you can relax and rest through the holidays. But until you're clear on what you can do and what you want to do, holidays can be very triggering or activating, because there's expectation that you think you're placing on yourself. But once you're clear on what you can do, then we'll move to the next one. I think this is when we start talking about family. And we want to communicate this with family. What are you willing to do? Like, say, for example, a mom loses her spouse, and the children are used to coming to that holiday, and she hosts every holiday. She may not have energy to host or to cook. Or she may need that, because I don't want to change that. That's what I do need. So we want to check in with what feeds you, what speaks to you, right? Some people want to just avoid holidays altogether for now. I want to travel this year. I want to exit. I don't want to be around anybody that kind of triggers me. I want to be with places where people don't know me. And we really want you to think about what speaks to you, and then communicate to the family what it is you need. They might need something else, but that doesn't mean they get to push it on you. And so we need to figure out how we navigate that. The example that I give in my boundaries lecture, if you want a formula on how to figure that out, is a very simple statement. It's 3 parts. When blank, I feel blank, what I would like is blank. When blank, I feel blank, what I would like is blank. And I want you journaling that statement. So if I'm a spouse who just lost my spouse, and I've got children expecting me to host the holidays, I'm going to say, when I think of the holidays, I feel overwhelmed. And what I would like is not have to do any performances of anything this year. Now I know where my boundary is. Now I got to figure out how I communicate that to my kids, right? And how can we navigate around that? And maybe it's like, well, Mom, we really want to be at the house, but you don't have to cook. Can you at least do that? We can banter back and forth and communicate our needs, but we want to get in touch with those feelings and know that you can break away from family traditions or traditions for now, because we don't need to do them this year if we don't want to. The next one that we talk about is about special gatherings. So sometimes when we create an intention around the holidays, this could be a special event, it could be a hosting, it could be one thing that we always like with Christians, for example, if the tradition is stockings, for example, if you lost a loved one, you could have a stocking in the name of the loved one who's passed. And you could leave papers out with pens that when people come to the home, you ask them to write down a memory and stuff the stocking. And each year we do this, and we can pull out those memories and read it to each other, because part of what happens in loss is we really want to talk about our loved one. We want them to bring up their names, but people walk on eggshells and they think I can't bring up their name because it's going to trigger you, when in essence you really want to talk about them. So sometimes it takes you to offer the initiative that I do want to talk about dad, or I do want to talk about my son, or I do want to talk about my puppy dog, right? Or whoever I've lost. And so we want to create intention around a gathering, because you need to figure out for you, what is it that you need? Because if it's a permission to talk, people will talk. They just are waiting for your guidance on what you want with that. So creating those kinds of special moments or gatherings is creating intention around the holiday, so that way you are using the holiday to best service you and get the balm for your soul on what you're needing that holiday. The next one is gifting. And what we talk about with gifting, this could be, again, something you can do in honor or memoriam. When we talk in my grief class, we talk a lot about what we call the scarring process. One comparative psychology gift that I teach about our bodies is the scarring process is the grief process. And if you understand it, and you look at a scar that you have, you realize your body's saying, I know how to do this. Now just get out of my way. Because if you understand that, go back to a scar you haven't thought of in years, figure out how it happened. Was it an accident? Was it a tragedy? Was it elective? Was it surgery? There was usually a time of what we call shock, where you're going through whatever happened to that scenario. There's a period of disorganization where you have to rework whatever just happened. A physical therapy, we're kind of doing life differently. Like I mentioned, I worked with back surgery candidates. I had a pro golfer once that 20 surgeries on their back. And each time they kept golfing, they blew out another disc. And so eventually we have a rod in this woman's back. But each time she went through it, we went through the shock of the surgery, the disorganization where she had to reform her golf swing, get new clubs, find a way to kind of manage the process of scarring. Your body forms scabs, and those through holidays, other things might trigger it and rip the scab off. But eventually the scab will form a scar. And the scar reminds us, no matter what loss you go through, it always becomes a scar. It can never define you. And if you think it's still defining you, especially during the holidays, you're still in shock or disorganization. So we want to be gentle with ourselves, knowing that if gifting that, like if I get my scar, I always talk about if I had a scar, if I lost a child, I may want to put a tattoo on that scar. I never want to forget that baby. But if I was married to a malignant narcissist, I may want to put some vitamin E on that scar, let that thing fade into my narrative. How you navigate the memory is up to you. And that's kind of where gifting comes in. Is there a donation? Is there a memoriam? Is there something I want to do in honor of them? And the next one is also kind of fun. It's about gifting self. And what we mean by this is, if your loved one, I always love an example of one of my best friends' daddy. I worked with her for years, and her daddy would always send her a dozen roses at Valentine's. And it was so beautiful that he did that. And if that is something that she still wants to receive, I would almost invite her to put a credit card on file with a flower place to make sure she gets sent a dozen roses every year at Valentine's, right? There's just something about keeping that memory alive, knowing that that's what her daddy would do, right? And so it's about knowing, how can I either give self, whether it's a trip, a time, an activity, an action, that is in honor of the loved one or how they would love me. And so we just want you to hold space for that if you need to. The last two that we talk about is volunteering your time or skills. And what we mean by this is that when you have 40%, you're probably looking at me like, Lori, I don't have time to volunteer. I have energy for that. But when we start getting into what we call reorganization, you might start realizing you're getting some of your energy back. Cortisol starts lowering. You might be in the holiday time where it's not as raw. You're maybe not in shock anymore, the disorganization. This might be time when I start giving back to others. And so sometimes getting out of self, whether it's helping with a Thanksgiving meal, a women's shelter, Toys for Tots, being able to gift somebody else gets us out of that grief and helps us. The last one that we talk about, and then we can open this up for our self-care plan, is really being aware that your greatest happiness may come in doing something for someone else. And what we mean by that is, you're shifting in your grief process. I always use the analogy, another comparative psychology gift about grief, is that the caterpillar who's going to become a butterfly is the grief process. It's quite beautiful. And if you don't trust me on this, order the painter butterflies and learn it. When you get these cute little butterflies or these caterpillars, they go into shock. They don't know what's happening to themselves, but they'll be forever changed. They'll always be a caterpillar. But when it gets to the other side of the process, it has the ability to have a new name and a new way to get back into life, none of which it did on its own. And the beauty of that is that when it forms disorganization or the chrysalis or the cocoon, this is where the grief work happens. But what you and I do in our culture is we don't know that's a thing. We don't know how to hold space for this. And this is where the holidays really can be that space for you to be able to really protect it. Because what you and I do in our culture is we rip that thing open, grab the butterfly, and try to force a new normal. And when we do that, we maim its wings. We get stuck in complicated grief. And if you order the painter butterflies, you'll learn how powerful this is, because if you get near the chrysalis, it actually has an emergency response. It starts shaking uncontrollably. It's kind of creepy and cool. And the beauty of this is that you know to back off. And this is what we're trying to invite you to do, is use the holidays to help with this grief process, holding the space, honoring yourself, honoring the loved one, that self-care, creating intention, knowing you only have 40%. Be gentle with yourself. Use the 20-minute rule. You can do anything for 20 minutes. Don't expose yourself to Jenny down the block. Stay away from them for now. You only find your 3 safe people while you're going through this process. And once that's done, the chrysalis actually clears. You see the butterfly before it comes out, and then it looks out. And that's where we learn about Kübler-Ross's emotions. That's when you move through acceptance, because you've gone through depression, which helps you reroute your neural pathways. If I feel the feelings underneath depression. And that's why I don't want you scared of that word, because not all of it's clinical. Not every time do you need to get medicated or therapeutic intervention. Depression is the right space to hold, because you and I weren't made for detachment. But it holds space for deep-rooted sadness. And as you feel the feelings, it reroutes those neural pathways and creates that beautiful butterfly flight. That's how we move into acceptance. And that's where you're like, oh, this is how I do that. You don't do it. Grief does. And you can trust that process. So pay attention, because when you start hearing somebody else's story and you're like, oh my gosh, I remember when I was that raw. I'm not there anymore. I actually had a shift, but I'm not where Lori says, where I know how to get back into life. Where am I? That lets you know that your chrysalis is clearing and you're about to see the pathway back. And so we want you to pay attention that greatest happiness in doing something for someone else is that process of shift. And when you go through this process. And so what we're going to end with before we open it up for questions is kind of remembering that anticipation of the holiday is usually the more stressful than the actual holiday itself. And so we want to know that through that anticipation, if you can create a plan on how you're going about it, then we can reduce, again, that commander's intent. I don't have to have so much anxiety around this if I take control ahead of a time and anticipate what I need before it comes. And this is where we'll close kind of with the plan. And I know Veronica is going to send out, because creating a self-care plan is when you're down. These are things, if you think ahead of time. In fact, there's this cute little podcaster. I have to borrow it from him, because he doesn't use self-care plan, he uses another term. But the idea is that if I was to give Veronica, if she was my child and I'm leaving her with a friend, I would give a list of a self-care plan, how to take care of Veronica. This is how many hours of sleep she needs. This is what she likes to eat. This is what she enjoys doing. She likes to do her TV time at this time. I would come up with a whole plan. And we almost invite you guys to create that own self-plan, because when you're down, you're going to forget what brings you joy and what helps get you calm or your nervous system re-regulated. So we're going to kind of give you some ideas now. And I know Veronica is going to send this content out to you in kind of a worksheet form, so you can kind of create your own plan before the holidays. But some of the things we invite you to sit with is, I want you to identify people that you can call, that do care about you and will listen and not become a Jenny and make a statement to you, like a value statement or judgment. People that really can hold the space without anticipation. of changing it or making it about something else or about them. We also want you to identify places or activities that help you stay calm, help your nervous system, help you actually relax, feel comforted, be secure, excited, or invigorated. And so when you can identify those places, if you love your bath time, if you love going for a walk, if you like going to your friend's house, if you like going to mom's house, but I really just enjoy the evenings when we just can sit around a fire and talk, I want you to specify what are the activities and places that help me. So we identify them and we know where to go. Also, knowing what's your favorite hobby. You might have forgotten when we're in depression or of grief, we might forget what brings us joy, a little dysthymia in some ways, right? Nothing that really makes me happy or used to make me happy makes me happy right now. So if we kind of capture it, maybe a favorite hobby. I know there's kids are all into the gaming and that kind of thing, but if you can do something non-digital, at 𝘃𝗹𝗃 we teach you a lot about digital mindfulness. We're not shaming technology, but the way you get your nervous system re-regulated is not on screens, because every screen you're spending about 46 years of your life on a screen. That's a lot of time. 26 and a half years of your life you're sleeping. And so, and the only negative thing I'll say about those screen times is that they're made with code. And so code is a hard line. It stresses out the brain. What we're talking about places or a hobby is that maybe it's outdoors, maybe it's being in nature, maybe it's, looking at birds or playing with dogs or crafting, puzzles. What is it that you like to do? And kind of make a list of those hobbies. Maybe you have a current project you're working on. And again, it's not, we have 40%, so we're not doing a lot of it. Maybe we're spending 5 minutes on that project a day or 30 minutes a day. But is there something that I'm doing? Maybe I'm trying to get through dad's clothes. Those are really tentative things. As a grief therapist, we don't want you rushing through, especially clothing, things of that nature. It's the last place that touched their body. It's the last place of encounter. Those are usually the last things we give away. So if you need to hold on to those things, you hold on to them. But kind of clarify what your projects are and know how much time you can give them per day. Identify what you need to do next. Is there something that's pressing? As a therapist, I call them false deadlines or realistic deadlines. So I want you to focus on a realistic deadline, things that you have to get done. But the false deadlines, corporate America calls them the parking lot meetings. So if we're having a meeting, but you brought up a really good topic, thanks Veronica for that, but I'm going to put it over here for now, and we'll address it later. But I want you to just kind of clarify what is just the next step, and just one step at a time. Selecting music that makes you feel calm, comforted, excited. Music can have a very calming system or for the nervous system. And it can also be agitating. So I need you to know what calms you, what comforts you, what excites you. Are we exposing ourselves to moments of that? It's amazing what transformation and music therapists can do for you with sound. We do a lot of things at 𝘃𝗃𝗃 with singing bowls, sound bowls, the vibration of that. There's just a lot of beauty in that. So really identify what helps you during this time. Also identify reading materials that you enjoy. You may not want to do a heavy read right now or a learning read, but maybe an escape read or magazines or children's stories or whatever. And maybe stay away from the news for now. We don't need a lot of negativity if it feels negative. And so just be cautious about what you like to read and what brings joy and enjoyment to you. Create a list of favorite sayings or quotes or reminders. I was sharing with Veronica when I was pregnant and birthing my kids. I was so nervous about just the birthing process. So I created 5 beautiful scriptures that I just love, and I had them on a card. And whenever I get anxious, I just read those. And so you might have quotes or affirmations, mantras, quotes, things that calm you, and collecting those into a location can help ground you in some ways. And so kind of capturing those. And the last one is, what is one new thing that you'd like to try? We kind of want to go to what we call hope and kind of that next, because there is life after loss. And even though we don't believe it at this time, I can guarantee it's there because I've witnessed it for 33 years as a grief therapist. But right now, even though you don't believe it, maybe there is something new you'd like to try, and just kind of put it on the list, and just kind of, it keeps us kind of moving forward and keeping the energy going, even if we don't believe it just yet. So that's what we have for you tonight. And then I think we can open it up for questions. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lori. That was incredibly valuable and some really helpful tips to help us better prepare for the holidays that are coming up, and a good reminder to share what we need from our families and also helpful ways to set boundaries so that we can, do what's best and what we need. Uh, so before I pause the recording, I do want to go ahead and just share real quick my screen. So as Lori went over, she was walking us through the self-care plan. This is a ready-made template that you can use, and I'll share the link for this in the video details. But we've essentially made it so that when you open it, it'll just ask you to save on your local uh, Google Drive, and then you can fill this in to create your very own self-care plan to help you navigate the holiday season. And in addition to that, what I want to go ahead and also share is, so today we heard from Lori. I'll share Lori's contact information in the video description in case you'd like to reach out and set some time with her. In addition, we have a couple of great workshops planned for our members. So next week, we will be hearing from Jeff. He's actually on the call. He's an amazing financial planning expert who's going to walk us through financial planning after loss and key things that you can do for your estate before the year ends to make sure that you're, set up in a great position. And then we're also the week after we're going to hear from Ashley. So she is a death doula and writing coach, and she's going to walk us through an intro to memoir writing. If you are not yet a member and are interested, I'll also share a link below on how to join the platform where you have access to these workshops as a member and you have the opportunity to, join and ask questions. So with that, I'll go ahead and just say thank you to all. I'll pause the recording so that we can go into the Q&A section.